several epistemological issues in Western philosophy. Today, our day of metaphysics. Today, we are going to listen to some of the seminal issues, questions that have been discussed in metaphysics in Western philosophical tradition. So, let us welcome Dr. Sebanti Bhattacharya this morning. She is a professor of philosophy at Sister Nivedita Government General Degree College for Girls in Kolkata, where she is, also acting as principal. And her research areas include analytic philosophy, feminist ethics, etc. She has a good number of publications to her credit. So today she will be speaking on the problem of universal. So over to you, Dr. Bhattacharya, please. Yeah, I think Dr. Bhattacharya has lost the connection. Um, I'm sure she is trying to get back. Yeah, so can you hear us, Dr. Bhattacharya?
Am I audible?
Yeah,
Audible
yeah,
and
yeah.
visible. Sorry, very sorry. Something
No, no,
went
no.
wrong.
That's okay. These things happen. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So my introduction is over. Now, please start your lecture on the problem of universal.
Thank you. A very good morning to all of you. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Bhakti Vedanta Research Center Trust, Professor Nirmala Narayan Chakraborty, Professor Madhuchanda Sen, and Professor Shumanta Rudra for inviting me to deliver this lecture. The problem of universals has intrigued the philosophers from a very early period in the history of thought. There are two ancient problems. The one is the problem of many in one, which poses the question, why is the same thing called by different names? And the other is the problem of one in many, which raises the question, why are different things called by the same name? The first is the problem of substance, and the second is the problem of universals. It is a fact that we give the same name to different particular objects which differ from each other in various ways. For example, there are indefinitely many objects which are called table. They are numerically different from each other for being in different times and places, and they may be qualitatively different as well, varying in shape, in size, or color, or number, or legs, etc. But despite these differences, there is a certain form or pattern common to them all. That is why they are all called tables. And according to those who believe in the existence of universals, that which is common to them all is called a universal. The above is the argument which has been traditionally put forward in favor of the existence of universals, and this argument is known as argument from multiple denotation. There is, however, another argument which has also been traditionally put forward in favor of the existence of universals. This argument is known as the argument from resemblance. In this argument, it has been said that we can find various different particular objects to resemble each other, and we can account for this resemblance among different particular objects only by accepting something identically present in the resembling objects. And to that something, we can give the name of universal. We can illustrate this argument with the example of two red balls. It is obvious that they resemble each other in certain respects, that is in respects of color and shape. We may say that the color red and the round shape are identically present in both the balls, and to that which is identically present in them, we give the name universals. So these are two standard arguments identically put forward in favor of the existence of universal. The first one is the same which Vaisheshika philosophers have offered for the existence of Samanya or Jati. There is Anugata Babhar, and to explain the Anugata Babhar, there must be some Anugata Pratiti, and the Anugata Pratiti, the cause of the Anugata Pratiti must be some Anugata Dharma present in all of them. So these are the two standard arguments traditionally put forward in Western philosophy in favor of the existence of universals. It is very interesting to note that by following these standard arguments, the realists do not reach the same end. Though all the realists, that is who believe, that is who admits the existence of universals, they are called realists. Though all the realists are of the opinion that universals are non-mental, mind-independent, public something with which we are somehow or other acquainted, yet they differ regarding the nature and ontological status of the universal. There are two main versions of realism about universals. One is of Plato and the other is of Aristotle. Plato puts forward a transcendent view of universals, according to which universals have their being in a non-temporal, non-spatial realm, and the existence of particulars is logically dependent on the existence of the universal. But the converse is not true. Aristotle, on the other hand, puts forward an immanent view of universals, according to which universals and particulars have mutual dependence. Platonic universals are substantive, while Aristotelian universals are adjectival. Plato begins by saying that there must be a single form or essence common to these particular things which have a common name. This form or essence constitute their very being. For example, there is a group of particulars like class of bees. Though bees differ from each other individually, that is, some are bigger, some smaller, and so on, nevertheless, they form a group such that they are all bees. There are numerous other such classes, which include natural objects like trees, artifacts like tables, etc. Plato is suggesting that in each case, we can use the class name because there is a single characteristic, namely the one form, which is somehow present in all the particular instances within the class. To quote from Republic, Book 10, whenever a number of individuals have a common name, we assume them to have also a corresponding idea or form, unquote. And these forms are later described as universals. But according to Plato, they are not merely universals. And here lies the peculiarity of Plato's theory. For him, these forms alone are real. The particulars are only semi-real. The forms are ideal standards of perfection, of which particulars are approximations. Plato believes that the sensible world, which is unstable, ever-changing, and imperfect, cannot be fully real. Knowledge, on the other hand, being certain and not open to error, must have its object something stable and perfect. Thus, there must be some stable and perfect objects behind the fleeting objects of sense, which are the objects of true knowledge, knowledge by the mind as opposed to the senses, and these are the forms. Thus, according to Plato, forms are ideal standards and particulars are inferior copies of them. Now, the next question is, if forms, which are the ideal standards of perfection, exist apart from the particulars and are yet somehow the source of their being, how are the two related? In answer, Plato offers two metaphors, participation and imitation. Thus, one can say that particular objects participate in the form, or one can say that they imitate the form. That is, particulars are copies of forms, as mirror images are copies of originals. Plato's theory of forms invites objections in its every step, the basic contention of all of them being the same. Forms cannot both be universals and ideal standards. It is very interesting to note that in his later dialogues, especially in Parmenides, Plato himself anticipates certain objections against his theory of forms. Here he considers the problem, if forms are universals, there are as many forms as there are common names or class words. On the other hand, if forms are also perfect beings, the things in the world aspire to imitate in vain, then the question arises whether there are forms corresponding to man, water and fire, or mud, hair and dirt. It seems that individual men and individual flames are all equally men, and fire, men and fire. And there is no scale of perfection of which the form is the culminating point. Moreover, it is ridiculous to contemplate perfect hair or mud. Plato also anticipates objections against the way he describes the relation between forms and particulars. If the metaphor of imitation is chosen, according to which particulars are copies of forms as mirror images, are copies of originals, the objection from third man arises. Actually, it is very interesting that the Plato himself has spoken of the famous third man argument, which we have read so many times, which can be raised against his theory of forms. He himself has thought of this problem. For example, let me say, the form of greatness is being postulated to explain the resemblance among great things. But Plato supposes that the form of greatness must itself be great, for being the ideal standard of all great things, and thus must resemble particular great things. Now, to explain this resemblance between the form of greatness and the particular great things, we have to postulate another form of greatness, and this process will go on ad infinitum. This argument also brings out the incompatibility of the two aspects of the forms, as universals and as ideals. If the form of greatness is merely a universal, then there is no reason why it should itself be great, just as manhood should not itself be a human. But if we regard the very same thing, greatness as ideal, then it must be great, and the infinite regress would arise. Thus, it seems that Plato himself was perfectly aware of this incompatibility. Aristotle also argues along the same line. His point is that while trying to show forms both as universals and ideal standards, Plato has failed miserably in establishing either of them. Among his various arguments, I shall choose only a few. Aristotle objects to the account given for the relationship between forms and particulars. He objects that things cannot come from the forms in any of the usual senses of from. The explanatory phrases used by Plato, that is participation and imitation, are merely poetical metaphors. According to him, if forms are separate and apart from the particulars of which they are the forms, then neither imitation nor participation can give an adequate account of the relationship between the two. Again, if forms are the ideal standards and particular objects imitate them, then the forms will be individual objects like those other objects of which they are the forms. Whereas they should not be individual objects, but universals. The ideal man, for instance, will then be an individual like Socrates. Further, on the supposition that when there is a plurality of objects possessing a common name, there must be an eternal pattern of or form, we shall have to posit a third man whom not only Socrates but also the ideal man imitates. The reason is that Socrates and the ideal man have a nature in common, therefore there must be a subsistent universal beyond them. But in this case, the difficulty will always recur and there will be an infinite regress. So here it seems that he speaks of the difficulty of which Plato himself mentions in Parmenides. Although whether Plato modified his attitude on this issue is a highly controversial matter, but as far as Aristotle is concerned, it seems that he is arguing from the point of view of his own theory, according to which the form is the immanent essence of sensible objects. The third and the most important type of criticism that Aristotle makes against Platonic theory of forms is that it is useless. The forms provide no solution either to the problem of change and coming to be or to the problem of knowledge. He says that forms are only purposeless doubling of visible things. They are supposed to explain why the multitude of things in the world exist, but it ends up in positing the existence of another multitude of things. Arguing once more from the point of view of his own conception of immanent form, Aristotle denies that the forms help towards the knowledge of particulars. He presupposes Socrates' view of knowledge, according to which knowledge must always be of judgmental form. That is, which we ascribe. That is which we ascribe certain, in which we ascribe certain predicate to a subject. Thus, in order to know something as existing, we must know it under certain predicate, or in other words, an existing thing, in order to be knowable, must be something or other. That is, it must have some property. For example, a table, in order to exist, must be a table or have tableness in it. So Aristotle argues that if that essence or property, that is tableness, does not belong to the object itself and be something transcended, then we cannot know it. Thus, the Platonic theory of forms renders knowledge of things impossible. However, though Aristotle makes severe criticism against the Platonic theory of forms, yet he is in full agreement with Plato in some respects. First, for both philosophers, it is form that is knowable. Aristotle is more explicit than Plato in that he contrasts the form of each object with its matter. He distinguishes between the wood a table is made of and the form the table has. That is what differentiates a table from some other objects made of wood, such as a chair. Like Plato, he also thinks that it is the form that makes a thing knowable. We distinguish a table from a chair by its form. Again, both of them agree on the point that universal is not at all a subjective concept, but has an objective reality. But they differ widely on the point of the nature and ontological status of the universe. For Plato, the particular objects of everyday experience, though shared in the forms, yet are not fully real or really real. What is really real is only the form. Whereas for Aristotle, at least according to the doctrine of the categories, what has the true being, or in his own words, what can be called the substance, is the concrete individual object, the complex of form and matter. For example, this table, this chair, Socrates, and so on. That is, which are individual and separable. Here, separable means which has a separate existence. That is, which does not depend on any other thing for its existence. For him, the form of a table does not have a separate existence. It cannot exist except in conjunction with matter of some sort. Or whiteness, in order to exist, must depend on certain white objects. Thus, white things are prior to whiteness. Plato, on the contrary, holds that whiteness is prior to white things. For the existence of white things is simply a matter of their sharing in whiteness. We can argue with Aristotle along the same line and say that the standard arguments from multiple denotation and resemblance typically establish the Aristotelian universal or immanent universal. For they establish that universal, which is a common property existing identically in each of the particular objects called by the same name or which resemble each other. On the other hand, though Plato argues with the standard argument from multiple denotation, yet the argument itself does not establish the Platonic universals. For the Platonic universal is not something which is particular, which the particulars have in common. What the particulars have in common on Platonic principles is not the universals, but the identical relation which they all bear with the universal. Austin, in his paper, Are There A Priori Concepts, has pointed out the same thing. He says that as universal is proved as existing in the different sensible particulars, the question of its existence without instances does not arise. Thus, the most common argument which is put forward to prove the existence of universals establishes the immanent universal and not the transcendent. It can be said that these standard arguments which prove the existence of universals are typically transcendental arguments. Though it is a debatable issue, I have found many thinkers object to it, but let us see why I'm calling it a transcendental argument. Actually, J. Austin has said that these arguments are transcendental argument in the same paper, Are There a Priori Concepts? Now, what exactly is a transcendental argument? The principles behind the transcendental argument are first clearly articulated by Immanuel Kant. A transcendental argument is an argument which begins from the consideration that we have certain very general kind of experience which cannot be denied. And then the argument proceeds to show that unless a certain thing were the case, there could not be any such experience. And finally concludes that that thing is indeed the case. In short, it can be said that in a transcendental argument, in order to explain some empirical fact, we postulate the existence of something non-empirical. The standard argument from multiple denotation is a transcendental argument because in this case, to explain the fact of giving the same name to different particular objects, which we postulate the existence of universals. The standard argument from resemblance can also be said to be a transcendental argument because here it is said that to explain the fact of resemblance among different particular objects, we have to postulate the existence of the universal in each of them. And according to the Western theory of perception, universals cannot be the object of our perception. They are incorrigibly abstract. The problem with a transcendental argument is that in order to explain a fact, it provides with a hypothesis. But one can always argue that it is not the only hypothesis. There are other hypotheses which can explain the fact perfectly well. The standard arguments for the existence of universals also face this criticism. There is a number of philosophers who are of the opinion that the fact of multiple denotation or the problem of one over the many can be solved without postulating the existence of universals as a mind-independent entity. With their attempts to offer various solutions to the problem, various rival theories of universals have come into being. One such attempt is made by the conceptualist. Conceptualism, strictly speaking, is not a rival theory of realism. But unlike realism, it only holds that universals are mental or mind-dependent. We do not discover it, but invent it in order to serve our purpose. Conceptualism acknowledges the fact that generality is an essential feature of both our thought and language, and it seeks to answer the question how general mental concepts are formed from the particular data of experience. This theory is primarily associated with the three classical British empiricists, Locke, Berkeley, and Hume. Traditionally, the theory which opposes the existence of universals is called nominalism. According to this theory, particulars called by the same name resemble each other in being called by the same name. However, the extreme form of nominalism, according to which all that is common to a group of particulars is there being called by the same name has never been seriously held by anybody. A milder form of nominalism is put forward by Thomas Hobbes. According to him, only words are universals. A universal word or name is imposed on many things for their similarity in some quality. So a table is a universal word applicable to a group of individual objects among which a certain resemblance holds. In this way, nominalism shows that when one identical word is used, it is not necessary that one identical object should be present in the objects which it denotes. It is the very function of the word to denote many things. That is, it is by nature general. The nominalists think that the realists have treated general words as essentially proper names. Just as the proper name Ernest Bevin stands for a single particular person, or Westminster Cathedral stands for a single particular building, the realists have thought that a general word like table or tree or man is also a name of a single particular entity. And that is the reason why the realists think that there must be some identical thing present in all the particular objects which share the same general name. Against their view, it can be argued that nominalists' accusation really does not hold. A realist need not at all deny the generality of the terms which introduce universals. On the contrary, they begin from the very assumption that a general name is applicable to various particulars. But they ask, why is it which enables, but they ask, what is it which enables them to be called by the same name? One cannot say that the only thing which is common to them is that they are called by the same name. We must at least say that all the objects called by the same name resemble each other in a certain way. And according to the realists, we cannot explain that resemblance unless there is some identical feature present in the things which resemble each other. Moreover, the realists never claim that it is the universal for which the general name of objects like table or man stands. The universal is denoted by an abstract name or by the name of an attribute, like humanity. Man, quote unquote, man is a name of many things. Quote unquote, humanity, on the other hand, is a name of an attribute of those things. Though humanity denotes an attribute of many different objects, the attribute itself is always conceived as one, not many. Resemblance theory or similarity theory is a form of nominalism. According to this theory, particulars called by the same name resemble each other in being called by the same name. Resemblance theory tries to explain the fact of multiple denotation without postulating the existence of universals in either level, mental or ontological. As we have already stated in the first section, according to them, the particulars called by the same name just resemble each other. For them, the qualities of any given objects are as particular and localized as the object itself. If there are two billiard balls of the same composition and size, one of them on the table and the other on the floor, then the redness and roundness of the one on the table are on the table themselves and are distinguished from those on the other one on the floor. They just resemble one another. Their sameness is better rendered by saying that the red of one is exactly like the red of the other. A resemblance theorist has observed that this second resemblance, that is, for example, the red of A is like the red of B, is not further analyzable. A.D. Huxley has said that in his book, Theory of Knowledge. I would just mention a classical objection against resemblance theories raised by Bertrand Russell in his book, The Problems of Philosophy. According to it, resemblance theory must treat resemblance or similarity itself as a universal. It is something of which there are many instances. We can define the universal table in terms of the similarity among tables, red in terms of similarity among red objects. Thus, we have a number of similarity relations holding among objects. Now, why do we call all of them as similarity relations? If we try to treat them as tables and reds, we shall be defining similarity in terms of the similarity relation holding among similarity relations. And thus there will be an infinite regress. To avoid such regress, we have to admit similarity as a universal of relation, of which this and that similarity relations are instances. Once we admit this universal, there is no reason why we should not admit others. Now, this is how the debate continued in the traditional line of thought. I will now move on. In the beginning of the 20th century, the whole Western philosophical discourse was shaken by analytic movement. The basic tenet of this movement was to treat all philosophical problems as really linguistic problems. This shift in viewpoint is known as linguistic turn. Those who brought about this linguistic turn believed that all philosophical problems can be solved by analyzing language. Consequently, ontological questions should also be answered by linguistic analysis. At this stage, the problem of universals resurfaced in the discourse as the problem of meaning of predicate expressions. Various debatable issues crop up at this point, like what can be considered as a predicate expression? Again, what do we understand by meaning of a predicate? Is it extension or intention? It is not possible to enter into those debates within the span of this lecture. I will just mention the names of two philosophers who have put forward their theories from this modern approach to the problem, and among them, one is hostile towards universals and does not admit their existence, and the other offers an elaborate theory of universals. The first is W.V.O. Quine, and the second is P.F. Strawson. Quine does not admit the existence of universals like properties and relations corresponding to predicates, but he admits the existence of classes. The classes are abstract entities, but they are not universals. Universals have instances, but classes do not have instances, they have members. Though in Word and Object, Quine has said that it is a misapprehension that I am a nominalist, but he is a nominalist because by admitting classes, he does not become a realist, because though class is an abstract object, but it is not a universal because it does not have instances. Universal is typically that which must have instances. Strawson, on the other hand, think that predicative expression introduces universals. Strawsons make an interesting classification of universals, depending upon two different kinds of predicates, which introduces them, and that is sortal and characteristic universals. Sortals in universals are introduced by substantive noun phrases prefixed by an indefinite article like a man, an apple, etc. And characterizing universals are introduced by adjectival and verb phrases like wise, red, die, etc. This classification reminds me of Drobhavritti Jati and Guno and Karmavritti Jati, as expressed by Vaisheshika philosophers. They have said that Samanno or Jati can reside in the first three categories admitted by them: Drobya, Gun, and Karma. Though Strawson admits the existence of universals, yet he thinks that universals do not exist in nature. Being incorrigibly abstract objects, they are objects of thought alone. Here he has to encounter a fierce pressure of a different disposition, a strong natural disposition to understand by the notion of existence the same thing as existence in nature. Quine is one of the proponents of this kind of naturalism. Those who adhere to this type of naturalism think that whatever exists at all exists in nature, and that whatever relations hold between things are relations that are exemplified in nature. Thus, they would raise the question, if universals are outside nature, how are they related to the natural objects that exemplify or instantiate them? Perhaps Plato anticipated this line of criticism. Hence, he placed universals outside nature and explains their relation in terms of copy and original. But this also is a natural analogy. Thus, according to the naturalist, the realist cannot explain the relation between the universal and the particular without taking help of any natural analogies. Strawson cannot find any suitable answer to this naturalistic objection. Now, I would like my listeners to think that aren't universals or perceivable? To take an example, when we listen to different songs based on same raga, don't we hear the raga also and identify it? Nayavashishika philosophers have said that we do have normal perception of universals. When we perceive a jar, we also perceive jarness in it. The Shonikosho is Shangjukta Samubhaya here. And when we perceive a red jar, we also perceive the universal redness in that red jar. And the Shonikosho is Shangjukta Samabeta Samubhaya. So we do have normal perception of universals according to Naivashishika philosophers. So I would conclude by saying that if only Western philosophical thought would fit in that in their theory of perception that we do have perception of universals. I'll ask my listeners to think about it. Thank you. I finished a bit early. Unmute. Please unmute, Maloda.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to know Plato and Aristotle's theory of universals, and then 20th century debates between Quine and Strawson on the nature of universal. We have quite a bit of time in our hand to ask questions and comments or to discuss further issues that participants might want. Please go ahead with your questions or comments or clarifications on the issues that Dr. Bhattacharya has discussed with us. So please go ahead.
Good morning, ma'am. My question is that if I consider two instances, in one instance, one can be saying that the universal is a mental construction, but its instances are real. And in another instance, one can be saying the universal is also a real thing and its instances are real. Then in the both instances, can we say that both of these camps can be called the realists?
Yes, those who have in modern times, those who have admitted the existence of universals only in the realm of thought as may be also called realists, just like Strawson or my professor Pranab Kumar Sen. He also thinks that in this line.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
There is a question from a participant. I just want to know that without a similarity notion, can we explain the problem of universal?
Actually, the problem of universals arise from the fact that there are similarities among particular objects, particular perceivable objects, and to explain that similarity, we have to postulate the existence of universals. This is the traditional line of thought regarding universals.
Mm-hmm. So if I just I'm just wondering, if somebody thinks that each individual is unique, then there is no question of similarity, and so there is no question of accepting any universal, right?
Right. Because but even they are unique, don't we say the red of this sari is like the red of that sari?
Mm-hmm.
We use this kind of phrases, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in order to explain that similarity, I think the universals may be postulated.
Mm-hmm. 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 Can you, I mean, you have already spoken about that. Can you briefly again, present Aristotle's criticism of Plato's theory of universal? And what is the main point of Aristotle?
The main point of Aristotle is that while when Plato tried to establish forms both as universals and as ideal standards, he has failed miserably because from his own view of immanent universals, Aristotle argues that if forms are not within the particulars, we cannot explain their knowledge. Neither we can explain their called by the same name. The problem of multiple denotation is neither also will be solved.
Mm-hmm.
The basic point is that while trying to establish forms both as universals and as ideal standards, Plato has failed.
Yeah, yeah. So any other questions or clarifications from the participants, please?
Ma'am, I have another question. In W.V. Quine's set theoretic ontology, why he is called a nominalist? Because like a universal class has its instances, particular instances, That following that we can say a set has its particular
Class, sorry to interrupt you. Class
yes,
is not a class. Yes, he
yes,
has admitted the existence of class because
yes,
classes have passed his taste of ontological commitment, and also the ontological admissibility. He has twin criterion for the existence of anything in his ontology, and classes pass both the tests. But classes are not universals. That they are abstract entities. Yes, they are abstract entities, but they are not universals. And here we must keep in mind that the distinction between abstract and concrete and universals or particulars are not dichotomous. They rather cut across. All universals are abstract, but not all abstract entities are universals. For example, a class is not a universal. A class does not have instances, it has members. But a universal is instantiated among its particulars. I just give an example. There is a class of all human beings, but it has many various members. But class of human beings is not instantiated by the human beings. Rather, the attribute humanity is instantiated by the human beings.
yes.
So I sorry, so Satyabrata, sorry,
yes,
just to continue this dialogue. So they for Quine, there is a very clear distinction between class membership and universal instantiation,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
ma'am,
Satyabrata, go ahead.
yes, sir. So ma'am, the members of a class, are these members real objects?
For Quine, of course, but they are particulars, they are real
Yes,
objects.
yes. So he is admitting that.
Yes.
So because of this stand, he is a realist, because he is admitting the members of.
That's what I'm telling, that though Quine admits the existence of classes, yet he does not admit the existence of universals, the attributes.
Okay.
And by admitting the existence of classes, he does not become a nominalist. Actually, that is what I was telling, that abstract entities and universals are not coextensive terms. All
Okay.
universals are abstract, but not all abstract entities are universal. For example, the patch of this whiteness, the unique patch of this whiteness, or the unique wisdom of Socrates, is not a universal because it is not shared by different entity. It is a particular entity, but it is abstract.
Okay.
This is called tropes nowadays. Some philosophers have said it modes, or some had called it tropes. And then from this empirical naturalistic point of view, recent philosophers have tried to explain universals by saying that they are a class of resembling tropes. That is another a long discussion maybe on that also.
Yes. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah,
I
please.
just want a clarification that in Naivashashika, we call it Shamanna or Jati. So, how can we translate universal and class here if we try to convey it in Bengali?
Shamanno is a universal, of course,
Yes.
and yes, Shamanno or Jati is a universal.
Yes.
But the concept of class, I don't think there is anything corresponding to that in Avishishika philosophers. Is there, Nimalada? I would like to know
I
that.
don't know. I
No,
don't know.
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
asking about Naivashashika concept. I'm asking if I want to translate, how can we
Shamanno,
what word we can use it for
Shamanno,
class?
of course, Shaman. Oh no, for class. I
Class.
don't know. I don't know. In Indian philosophical thought, is there anything corresponding to the word class? I really don't know. Shamanno or Jati is there, but Jati is a Shamanno Dharmo. It is
Yes.
not a class. Jati is a Shamanno Dharmo. But it is not a class. It is a universal, but not a class.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other? Please, we have some time, so we can. This is a very, very interesting and important issue in Western metaphysics. So, if you have any other questions or clarifications, please Go ahead. Acha, just to, since we have some time, and this is an interesting, very interesting discussion. I just, since you have worked with Professor Shen, I just want to know where does Professor Shen stand in between Quine and Strawson debate, and what is his, view
Yes,
here?
yes, yes. Just like wine, Professor Sen also thinks that we cannot quantify over the predicate position. Strawson had said that we can quantify over the predicate position also.
Mhm.
But like Quine, he thinks that we cannot quantify over the predicate position. There are two different functions of subject and predicate. Subject refers to the object in the world, but predicates refer not to the objects, but not the particular objects in the world, but to attributes, properties, and relations.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so when Quine is saying that we can't quantify over the predicates, what does he exactly mean?
Uh, he says that the predicate position is not open to quantification. Cannot be the values of bound variables. That's what his opinion, I think.
Okay, okay.
Ma'am, I have another question. Ma'am, can you repeat the portion about Bertrand Russell's critique of universal as an attribute?
Okay, okay. No, as in, but
Instead he said,
Bertrand Russell hasn't critiqued the universal's attribute. He rather has made a criticism against resemblance theory,
okay, okay,
saying
yes,
that
yes.
resemblance relation itself is a universal. I'll repeat
Yes,
that
that
position.
part of infinite regress you are talking about.
Okay, wait a bit.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, Russell in his book, The Problems of Philosophy, has raised a classical objection against resemblance theory. According to it, resemblance theory must treat resemblance or similarity itself as a universal. It is something of which there are many instances. We can define the universal table in terms of the similarity among tables, read in terms of similarity among read objects. Thus, we have a number of similarity relations holding among objects. Now, why do we call all of them as similarity relations? If we try to treat them as tables and reads, we shall be defining similarity in terms of similarity relation holding among similarity relations. And thus, there will be an infinite regress. To avoid such regress, we have to admit similarity as a universal of relation, of which this and that similarity relations are instances.
Yeah. So I
Thank you.
guess, this is how we can understand Russell, Shotobrato, that, if we talk about resemblance, then we can say that this table resembles that table, this chair resembles that chair, and so on. Then we will have a second order universal called resemblance, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay. And then I think Russell's apprehension is that this will go on ad infinitum,
The
yes,
right?
problem of multiple generation also occurs here. We call
Hmm,
two cat resemblance relation a resemblance relation. We call
hmm,
two dog with resemblance relation as resemblance relation. So we are giving the name resemblance relation to different resemblance
right,
relations. And
right,
how
right,
are we to explain the second order resemblance relations?
right, right, right.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, any other, please? Any other clarification or question? So, if you don't have any other question or comment to make, let me express my sincere thanks to Dr. Bhattacharya for her interesting discourse on the problem of universal in Western metaphysics. So we will continue, but since we have some time, is there anything that participants would like to discuss with us? Do you have anything to share with us? I mean, your questions, understanding, queries, etc.
Sir, I have a question regarding the written examination. So,
Mhm.
shall there will be any general syllabus, or the topics covered by the lectures should be the general
No, no,
syllabus?
topics covered by the resource persons.
Okay, okay,
They have
thanks.
sent us MCQs. Okay, primarily focusing on the content of their lectures. So I guess if you listen to these lectures, and I think these lectures are also available in YouTube. So that is, I think, enough for you to answer the MCQs in the exam.
And sir, for our presentations, do we are we required to submit any separate write-ups or just the presentation?
No, 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 just the presentation, just the
Okay, okay.
presentation. It is
Thank you very much.
just, these presentations are meant for just to see and also kind of inspire you to talk about things, that you find interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, sir.
so that's the main point.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Any other, uh, issue that you want to talk about? I guess yesterday we have sent a revised schedule of presentations because some of you, had some problem about the date and time. So I guess the new revised presentation schedule is fine with you, right? Okay, then since now we can assume the mono as sammati lakshanam. uh, so I guess let us then now thank again Dr. Bhattacharya, and let us wait for our next speaker, because our next lecture is scheduled to start from 12:30. Okay, and we will continue our discussion on universal even in the next session. So thank you very much, Dr.
Kamogda will be
Bhattacharya. Thank
speaking
you.
in next session.
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh, the
yes,
same
yes,
from.
yes,
Okay, okay.
yes, yes, yes. Yesterday we had very, very nice lectures on epistemology. Of course, everybody referred to Gettier problem, but then everybody has his own way of formulating the
Presenting.
problem, and also addressing several issues that emerge out of this problem. So we had a very, very nice discussion yesterday. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for taking some time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much
Okay,
for
okay,
giving me
okay.
this
Thank you.
opportunity.
Okay.